episode number 175 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema, being recorded on Friday, August 8th, 2025 at 11:27 a.m. A little late with this episode. It's been a very busy week, but here we are nonetheless, ready to talk about some films. I have the hot coffee, I have the cold water, staying hydrated on these waning summer days. It's getting a little bit warmer outside. I was driving around with the window down, and that was really great, man. Not having to, bundle up in the car with, the AC on going. Bundle up meaning like, hey man, you're in the car and the AC is going, and then it's like, oh man, it's too cold, and then you turn on the window and it's like, oh my gosh, it's too hot now. What can I do? Yeah, I'm gonna get that fall weather in, and it's gonna be really, really exceptional, man. That fall weather brings to mind just such creativity and brings to mind such inspiration, and that's what we gotta be focusing on, man, is our own work at hand. I think we spend so much time online, on social media, on websites of people, just acting like maniacs, or people who, you're like, oh man, this guy, he's written like 10 books and he's done this, he's directed 100 movies, and he's doing these amazing guitar solos. I can't do that. How is he or she more successful than me? And it's like, brother, we all are on our own path. So if you're going to be out there and you're going to be online, scrolling through social media like, oh man, they have this and they have this, it's like everyone in this world has the advantages and disadvantages when it comes to their art. Maybe you have more opportunity to work on your novel, or maybe you have less opportunity to work on playing guitar or learning a language or anything like that, you got to just kind of get out of the black void that is all that social media nonsense, and really just kind of hone in on your craft and focus on what you're doing, man, because you're on your own path. You are on your own distinct path, and you cannot compare yourself to anybody else, what they're doing. It's like, oh man, they're winning. Oh, this guy, he's younger than me, and he directed all these great movies, and oh man, Orson Welles, he was 24 and he directed Citizen Kane and this and that. It's like, hey man, what about everyone who didn't get their turn till later in life, man? What about the dude who's 90, who's like, hey man, I actually have decided that, I'm in a later point in my life, but I want to do this thing, I never really thought of until now. And it's like, man, you gotta just, first and foremost, if you're working on your art, man, you gotta do it because you want to do it. Also, I don't know if you hear that or not. The cat's playing with a toy back there. Hey, man, I'm recording over here. What are you doing to me? Let me get that toy for you. All right. Wish you guys could see this little guy right now. He's so funny. All right, there he goes. Anyways, what was I talking about? Yeah, no, so what I'm saying before is that you gotta actually enjoy what you're doing, man. So, if you're looking for, if you want to be a successful filmmaker, or a successful writer, or a musician, or a painter, or an art, or anything like that, man, it's gotta, you really gotta, you put in the time, put in the effort, and it's not guaranteed, man. Nothing in this life is guaranteed besides death, That's why that Don Dohler documentary I was talking about a little while ago, I just loved it so much because, yeah, man, we all hear the stories about, these early filmmakers, and they made these early shorts, then they went off and they got big and successful, Quentin Tarantino drops out of high school, works in a video store and makes these great films, and now he's considered, to most people, a great filmmaker. And yeah, sure, that happens, man. But what about the people who, even lesser than Don Dohler, what about the people who put their hearts and their souls into their projects and their passions, and then no one talks about them, man? It's just like, it's not guaranteed, but do you like doing it? Do you actually enjoy? It's hard work for sure. I mean, if you're, making a film or writing a novel or anything of the sort, it's hard work, and, sometimes it'll feel like a job, man. But if you're enjoying doing it, then it's almost like the benefits and the rewards of that are all secondary, man. Because, when you finish a project and then you are actually seeing it, after it's all said and done, and you're just like, wow, man, there you go. That's the worth it. That's what's worth it, man. So can't stress enough. Focus on you. Don't compare yourself online to any kind of social media nonsense. Everyone has different advantages and disadvantages. Focus on your art, man, and make it the best result that you can possibly make it. It's interesting kind of talking about the current landscape of theatrical films, man. I popped on HBO the other day, and at the same time, I saw it, and I was like, wow, man. I see that the newest Final Destination Bloodlines, which only just came out this past May, I believe. It's August now at the time of this recording, but it's already available to stream on there, and that is just such a wild, wild concept. If you Man, I'm just thinking about like even in the DVD era because that's one. I mean, people talk about when films are coming out in theaters, they wouldn't come out on VHS for about another year or so, and of course at that time VCRs. I say of course like I was there. I'm not. I'm only kind of repeating information that I hear. But VCRs are expensive and videotapes are expensive, so it was more of an not even necessarily an investment, more so of a particular you're more particular about what you kind of buy and what you kind of like wow, I own this film now, this is mine. And now with the with how the landscape of film and film distribution has changed, it really has kind of thrown a wrench into the curve because something like Final Destination Bloodlines, is a good theatrical film, and I think it's just a case that people just really aren't going to the theaters as much anymore. It's sort of like I think around COVID when theaters were shutting down and they were really trying whatever they could to get them back up and running. I think a lot of people got comfortable with the idea that films either being simultaneously released theatrically and streaming, or what is more common now, which is the window of a digital release. Even more, it's not talking about the window being not even just that it's streaming on HBO or Hulu or Netflix, but that the window to rent it for like $20 is really shortening. Because when it comes to the DVD era, I remember that for a while, for years and years, it was that a film would get released and then it would go out of theaters. 2 months later, you would get an announcement for the DVD, and then 2 months after that would be the release. So you still had like a 4 month window there. If you didn't see it theatrically, then you had to wait, a quarter of a year. And it made it more special, and it made films kind of valued more. I think because there's so many venues to watch a film now that I do think there is a certain level of, how do I want to put this, of disposability of just when you're making the effort to leave the house, to go park the car, to get a ticket, you're making a conscious choice of what film you're actually going to leave your house to go see. But now when we have all these streaming services, which are great, it comes off as far more casual. And I'm guilty of that as well. I'm not saying that I'm not at fault here because sometimes it is just like, oh well, I'm doing something, I'm cleaning the dishes, or I got to scrub something, or whatever it is, man. And I'm like, well, let me just throw on a film my iPad in the background or something. And I'm guilty of that. It's sort of like the amount of hands it takes, the amount of minds that it takes to put a film together for it to just be kind of dumped onto a streaming platform or not given the proper theatrical window, I think is really wild, man. Even like bigger stuff, it seems like it's just kind of being, it's in the general kind of zeitgeist for, X amount of time, maybe like, not for very long before it's eventually, kind of just put out there and not necessarily forgotten. But I think it's like, oh, move that to the side. Now we have this new big thing. I'm thinking about like, with something this year like Sinners. It's a big film, filmed on IMAX 70 millimeter. It's a film that they're really trying to advocate, to go see it in a full IMAX and to really kind of get the whole experience with that. And the thing with Sinners is that, and it's a film as well, is that, critically it did very well. People loved it, and financially it did really well. And I want to put my any kind of bias out aside. I'll be upfront and say I really wasn't a fan of Sinners. It just, I've said before, contemporary horror, I found myself losing more and more interest in. But even I can tell you that although I wasn't crazy, and I didn't even like hate it or anything, I just have some big problems with it, but whatever. But at the same time, a film like that, it's like, wow, this is a good theatrical film. This is one where, this is made for an IMAX. This is made for a large format. And I think in part of that, in terms of, you tell someone, okay, hey, go see Sinners. It's this, it's a really great film. And it's like, well, okay, I'll wait for HBO. And on HBO, I'm sure it's great on there and all that. I'm sure, but it's sort of like, I do think that you're missing something with not seeing certain films theatrically like that. And actually, even in the case of something like Sinners, when it comes to like IMAXs as well, I think IMAX is something that I really think when you see something in true IMAX, it is so hard to explain to people the experience of that because, and I won't get into the whole thing right now because there's so many different kinds of IMAXs, and I'm not going to bog it down to the different the dual lasers versus the single lasers versus all of that. It's not even very complicated. It's just a lot of information. Even I find myself confused sometimes. But when it comes to IMAX, I think that if they did a better job at having more true IMAX cinemas, true IMAX that can handle 1:3 aspect ratios, where when you see a 1:3 IMAX film, it is there is nothing like it. I mean, it is. When I saw Oppenheimer in IMAX 1570, I saw it twice actually. I was fortunate enough, and I you can look up pictures online. But it's almost like what I kind of imagine the that sphere in Vegas, man. You guys see that? That looks real cool, man. I'd love to go there sometime. See, I actually think I hear Metallica's doing a thing. Man, I would not mind going to that. That'd be cool. Anyways, but it's like, I can tell you, you can look at pictures and go like, oh wow, that's cool. But being there, it's like, oh my gosh. And I think that for a lot of people, if they go to an IMAX in part of like I don't even want to use AMC as an example because you have Lincoln Square, which is giant. But when you look at like a regular, Cinemark, AMC type IMAX, and it is a bigger screen, but it's not it's just a bigger screen. It's not true IMAX. When you're actually in it, it's like, oh my gosh, it is overwhelming. When you walk into that cinema, man, and you see how tall that screen is, and the fact that it is going to be 1:3, you cannot even imagine watching it elsewhere. I've watched Oppenheimer at home. I have the 4K. It's an amazing looking 4K. Actually, Nolan's 4Ks look some of the best. Oppenheimer, Tenet, Dunkirk, Interstellar. They're amazing looking 4Ks. But just being in there, I think educating people more about like, hey, yeah, you could stay home and watch Sinners or Oppenheimer on HBO or whatever. I don't think is Oppenheimer on HBO. I have no idea. Or you can see it like this. It's sort of like the same way of just like, do you want to, you can stay home and listen to a live recording of, a record or like a live recording, like a band, or you can go see them live. And I know that's kind of a different example. I'm not a big concert guy. I don't really like going to concerts. But it's that same sort of deal where when you're at that concert and it's just like, wow, this band that you love, they are right there in front of you playing these songs. It's sort of like, yeah, you can play it loud at home and all that, but to actually be there and feel it, it's like, wow, man, that's out of this world. And I think the release windows too. And I know this is kind of like a rambling episode. I don't really have any kind of like outline. I really am just kind of rambling. So I'm just here talking about these damn cinemas, man, because I just love the cinema so much. But I also need to weigh the pros and cons of what it comes down to, because when it comes to the release windows, the fact that they are so soon. I mean, what, 2 weeks maybe? I mean, the films are not valued anymore, because it's not a matter of, hey, let's go see, I don't know, some big kind of good, some big kind of studio action movie. You want to see with the surround sound. You want to hear the car chases and the gunfights, and you want to have a good time, And if you miss that, then it's sort of just like, oh man, oh man, I want to make a point of seeing this, because then if I don't, then I'm not gonna be able to see it for a little while, and this and that, but now it's like when sometimes I'll go on Amazon and I'll see the new releases available to rent or buy, and it's stuff that I just saw. I mean, when I was an acquaintance of mine last week or 2 weeks ago was like, yeah, we rented 28 years later and this and that, and I was like, man, I just saw that. And the flip side of that, and I have to be fair, and I have to look at it from another point of view, I should say. If you're living in, New York, LA, Chicago, one of these big kind of cities, I understand that there's price differences in terms of the tickets. I've seen some, and I'm talking about just a regular, regular screen, not 3D, not IMAX, not anything like that. I've seen sometimes it'll be like $20 for one ticket, which is insane. Joe Schmo only has X amount of money to spend every week. let alone and that's just if you're going by yourself. Let's say you're taking, a date, or you're taking, a loved one, or you're taking your family, not even factoring in concessions. You're looking at approaching close to at least a triple digit kind of number for a film that, I mean, how much are you really going to? Is it a film that you must see theatrically? But then at the same time, you got concessions, something like that. But then at home, is it better to just pay a $20, $25 thing up front and just, you can have your whole family there, and you only, I mean, I guess you always could just like get concessions if you wanted to, then bring it back home, because they were doing that during COVID, man. They had, like, we have a Cinemark here, and they have I think they're called like the Papa bag, or like Pop A bag, not Pop, like, not Pop Smurf or whatever like that. And so I get that, sort of like, hey, we can still make money on concessions and all that. So I get it. If you're living in an area like that, or even if you're not, and you're just like, hey, I want to have some friends over. We want to watch this new comedy movie or this new action movie, and we're fine. We have a beautiful TV. We have a great sound bar setup. We have, we have all this stuff. I completely and I totally understand and get it. And also as well, I in terms of like the nuisances in the cinema, I mean, they're there. Where I sit in the cinema, I like to sit in the front kind of area because I'm away from the people. I don't hear any whispering. Sometimes, you'll hear like maybe like a little thing here and there. I think honestly, since post-COVID, I haven't really had a bad experience since. I mean, I'm also not living in like a big city. I'm sure if you're in New York or LA or in this place, you're probably getting a lot of like, like people who are just like going crazy. But I'm also not seeing like, I'm not seeing like, I mean, I don't know. When I say like big films, I mean like I'm not seeing Superman. I'm not throwing shade at Superman. I'm just saying like that's not something I want to see. I did see something fairly bigger, like a big film recently, and there were like some teenagers there being like, make like a little comment here and there, and to me that was like the worst of it, where it's kind of like, all right, this is a bigger film, you're gonna attract a lot of people, but I get it, people, dudes just like chomping down popcorn, eating, they're adding more and more food to the damn concession area. I mean, good lord, I went to the AMC a little while ago, and they had these whole damn, like, sliders, man. And I'm like, holy moly. I mean, you watching, let's say you're watching, I don't know, what's a new film that's out? Let's say you're watching Weapons. That's a new film that's out. And maybe, I haven't seen the film yet, so I could be completely wrong. Maybe you have a quiet scene where it's like, oh, man, something gonna pop up around the corner or something like that. And, oh, man, the tension. And then meanwhile, you got this dude over here, man. And he's sucking down these sliders, and he's slurping that, that ketchup that's in the burger. And I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, man. I'm popcorn. I feel like, all right, that's a staple of cinemas. I get that. I don't like the sound of popcorn. I'm there to watch the damn film, man. I'll get a coffee if they got it, but I'm not there to be slurping and chewing away. But oh my goodness gracious, they're selling entire goddamn pepperoni pizzas. And I'm like, what in the world is happening, man? It's like they're doing everything to bring these people back to the cinemas. All I want is just some damn peace and quiet, man. But that's what it is. But no, I mean, I get both sides of the arguments to and from the cinematic experience. Some people are very adamant about not going to the cinema, and that's their right, that's their prerogative. Perhaps they have a financial situation that doesn't allow them as much ability to go to the cinema, or maybe they have a family and it's a little bit trickier, and it's just easier to say, okay, well, I want to go see, or I want to watch, I don't know, the new Superman, but I don't really, I got 3 kids, I got a wife, I don't really want to spend that kind of money at the cinema, but they all want to see it, so I can wait a couple weeks and rent it on Amazon or whatever for $25, and we can get, go to the store, get our own candy and popcorn and things like that, and act like a madman if you want. You can go, you start yelling at the screen, oh my gosh, this Superman, I can't believe how much he's flying, that's insane. You go to the theater, you start yelling about how much Superman is flying, and you might get a couple shushes, Also, don't be afraid to shush people, man, I tell you, that's very underrated. I had to shush somebody once. I'm thinking like, man, no one in this theater is going to shush this guy, what's going on here? Don't be rude about it, just say shush, man, hey, we're in a theater. But I get it. But also at the same time, I do think that when everything has come to a point where it's like, okay, this great film, like, I don't know, if it's a big budgeted, big film, I think people will still talk about it. But when it's something maybe a little bit like not as big and not getting quite as much attention, then it does kind of come down to, unless you're looking online of just like, I don't know, underrated movies from the year, or like you ask for a recommendation for somebody, like I mean, I've seen some really, really great films this year, and I think the fact of the matter is, unless you're looking for them, I don't know how much they're actually going to come up in terms of not even necessarily, quote unquote smaller kinds of films, but even films that maybe got a big theatrical release and maybe was not as talked about. I think of just like random films, like something like Novocaine, for example, with Jack Quaid, a fun action film. It was fun to see in the theater. The action was good. The comedy was good. It was a very enjoyable time. But I'm not hearing anyone talk about it. I mean, I've seen it pop up on, I think it's like Peacock or something. So it's like, unless you're looking on Peacock, then it's sort of like, you're not going to know about this film. Or something like Presence, the Steven Soderbergh film. Really solid, quiet, ghost film. It's a really good atmospheric film. But I think that has also kind of fallen to the wayside, where I asked somebody, hey, have you seen Presence? It's really good. They're like, what is that? So I think there is that gray area of films that kind of fall in between. That's what I'm talking about, like bigger films. I mean, quote unquote, films that were in 2,000 plus theaters, more so than the local kind of cinemas. Because I think those films, you're getting a better audience for the most part. You're getting films that people are willing to leave their house and see. I think of just films this year. I think of stuff like Ephes, or like The Ballad of Wallace Island, or just these really, really exceptional films that people were in the theater seeing them, and because I think people were going to these smaller kinds of cinemas, and these smaller kind of like local art house kind of cinemas are making a conscious effort to do so. It's not as disposable for them, where it's like, okay, well, we have all these, I could go to the cinema and I could rent, or, I could pay for this, that, or I could go on Amazon and go on Hulu, I can go on Amazon again, Netflix, I can go, I don't know, Peacock or I don't know, any streaming service. So I think that there is some sort of devalue in a way that it comes off as, it feels so disposable in a way, and it shouldn't be. I mean, films they're, like I said before, I mean, people spend years making just these films, man. I'm not talking about not even just like the lower budget, maybe, indie sort of stuff, or even like smaller scale, quote unquote, like maybe like 1 or 2 million, or, people spend years on a risk of a film. And that's why filmmaking in general is such a big risk. That's why, even no matter how bad a film is, just the effort and the time and scheduling, when you're going to shoot, and, actors and getting casting on, it is, for a film that may be awful, maybe god awful, or maybe brilliant, maybe one of the best films you ever see in your life, but just that risk. I think by having it be so casual and being so like, oh well, like maybe you watch a bad film and you're just like, oh, this film sucks, and then you move on. It's like, well, wait a minute, why does this suck? More than like a novel or something. Because a novel, like say you read a bad novel, but it's like, okay, you're spending X amount of time with it. You're devoting a lot of time. I think novels are a lot less disposable. And I know I'm kind of all over the place, kind of going in circles. But the point is that, and what is the point? You're asking yourself. And I'm wondering myself that, the devaluing of films, the devaluing of the theatrical experience, where we're going in terms of film distribution, of film seeing, of film, recommending. Because it's easy to go on like Letterboxd or go on Google and you go, I don't know, 10, 2025 films that you may have missed, or, great horror movies from the last 5 years you didn't see. It was another thing to go to the video store and actually look at these sorts of things. And I'm not like rose-tinted glasses at the video store. I think there was just as many problems as there was, just as many negatives as there was positives. But it also was fun because you're going to the store, you're making a conscious effort to, spend the $5 or $6 to rent this film. This is the film of the night. If the film is bad, then it's like, well, that's the one you went with. It's like, it's sort of like, you watch a bad film on Netflix, it's just like, okay, we'll go to the next film and all that. And that has its positives too. You're able to see more films. You're able to discover more. It's all positives and negatives. It was just something that I've been thinking about a lot lately in terms of just how people see films. Because I think a lot of us who are in these kinds of circles, or at least I imagine if you're listening to this show, you're into, you have acquaintances or friends or loved ones who are interested in films as well. And I've said before, I love getting recommendations, especially films I've never heard of. I've said before, I'm not really that knowledgeable on a lot of contemporary horror films. I'm talking about, like, when I say contemporary horror films, I don't mean, like, not the big ones, or even, like, the big theatrical ones, like the A24s or the Neon stuff. I know about those, but, like, then there's ones where I'm like I don't have Shutter, so somebody will say, like, oh, I had an acquaintance of mine who's like, oh, the what was that? The Rule of Jenny Penn, I think it was called. They were like, that was good. You should watch it. Or The Ugly Stepsister, which I think that might also be Shudder. They're like, it's good. And I'm like, I mean, I've heard of those, but I was like, oh, cool. I'm not hearing anybody talk about them. I want to go watch those films now because I have a background. I trust this person's opinion. They said it was good. And even though I'm not really crazy about a lot of contemporary horror, I want to watch those films and gain my own opinion. So that's all it is, man. It's just looking at films differently, looking at films as something a bit more, at the time and effort that gets put into it. Not just saying this film is good, this film is bad, but actually having something more kind of thoughtful to kind of come back to. Because you see films that get universally kind of dogged on or film, and that's, I think that is kind of a societal sort of thing where it's like everybody's dogging on this. I'm gonna dog on it too, and it's sort of like, I don't know. I like to look for something more besides that, and that's not me like putting my nose up like, oh, I'm above this. Yeah, you see plenty of like movies where like, man, that was just a stinker. But I'm not into the dogging on the universal dog. Even films that I've seen maybe like, I've thought about this for maybe 5 films in my entire life where I can confidently say that was one of the worst films I've ever seen. And this is over. I mean, I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of films. I've only seen maybe a couple, and I'd have to think about that. Where I'm like, yeah, that is one of the worst films I've ever seen. So when when everybody's dogging on this film or that film, or maybe the New World of the Worlds isn't very good, I like to watch it and kind of go, okay, well, the editing, I'm sure there's a lot of work putting it into it here, man. I mean, this is not like an easy overnight process. That no one sets out to intentionally make a bad film. And when I say that, I don't mean like, I don't mean like you're making like a Sharknado kind of thing. You're making like a comedy. You're making it, I'm talking about no one is putting in that time, or if they are, I don't see the point. But it's like, I would imagine that everyone who's making a film, making a novel, making a music album, making a painting, making a drawing, I don't know why you'd want to spend all that time and then say, we did it, guys, we made the worst thing ever. It's not, this isn't the producers, man. So, and I'm rambling on here. I just want to get my kind of eclectic thoughts out. There's no real rhyme or reason to, a lot of it. It's just what's been on my mind lately, and I'm watching the cat go over there, so don't mind me. But anyways, yeah, I just want to talk about a little bit of that. You may agree with me or disagree with me. That's fine. It's just wanting to get my thoughts out there, and just looking at films differently, put more value into them, into the experience of leaving your house and seeing a film or staying home and watching it. There's no right or wrong answer, just what's been kind of rattling around. But I'm going to wrap it up there, guys, because the cats are acting wild, and I think they're going to break something. So thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate it. Sorry this episode was a little bit late. It's been a busy week, but we're here, and we're going to make it through, man. No matter how bad or hard things get in life or stressful it is, you've made it this far, you've made it this point, and everything can be fixed, and everything can be resolved. There is no bottom of the pit, black void that you can't get yourself out of, or it can't be worked out. So, just you're alive, you're here. Every day is such a blessing, and it's okay to be stressed. It's okay to be worried and uncertain about a lot of things, but you got to remind yourself you've made it this far. You've been through these troubles in the past, and you're still here. You're still breathing and walking, or maybe you got all your fingers and toes, or maybe or anything like that. You're good. Oh, man, the cats are going crazy. I'm going to end it here before they break something else. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. Take care. All the best.